Okay folks, welcome to a short video about where on earth the skilled migration program is heading. Okay, so we're going to bring up a couple of topics that hopefully give you a little bit more understanding about the changes over the last few days with the occupation list changes, and more importantly, why the numbers have been reduced so much for the migration program and where it's all heading. Okay, so we're going to start off with why have the numbers reduced so much. Okay, so one of the main factors is the Liberal Party have got a number of very right-wing conservatives who seem to be driving where the migration program is heading. It's their view that if they can show the migration program to be being lowered, that they can play on that with the electorate and potentially win 2 or 3% of the vote, and they could be crucial in the federal election in a couple of months' time. So even though Peter Dutton is no longer the Minister for Immigration, I think clearly he's having some influence along with a couple of colleagues, and their view is if they can show that migration's been reduced and they can argue that that's good for the economy and it's good for jobs and it's good for congestion, then they might be able to win a couple of percent of the vote. Unfortunately, the reality is completely different to that. The congestion arguably is not the fault of migrants, it's just a fault of bad planning. For years and years by different state governments, skilled migration creates work. Every skilled migrant who migrates here creates 1.6 jobs for the economy. And I saw a stat the other day that people at, for example, PhD level, every PhD student creates about 6 unskilled jobs in the economy. So it's economically not good to reduce the migration program, but it's all a little bit about politics at the moment. So you'll see from the announcements yesterday that the 189 program is going to be more than halved down to 18,652 places for the next financial year, starting in July. So running a few numbers through that, we think there's going to be around 2,000 of those will be given to New Zealand citizens. So a lesser number than in the last year or two, mainly because if you were eligible as a New Zealand citizen, you would apply pretty quickly. You wouldn't keep waiting for this government to make more changes. So we think most of the people who are eligible have applied, and really it's now going to be people who needed another year or two to become eligible. So we think around 2,000 will come off that 18,652. Now each application has on average got 1.6 applicants in it. So there's a lot of single people apply, but there's also frequently people who apply with a partner and with kids. So when you allow for the fact that each application has 1.6 people on it, that brings the figure down to just 10,400 invitations for next program year for 189s. That's about 870 a month. We know there's about a 30% wasted invitation rate where people don't accept the invite for various reasons. So when the department allow for that, we think there's going to be around 1,130 invitations per month, split again 60% for the pro rata occupations and 40% for non-pro rata. Now we thought that it'd be around 2,500 a month for the next program year because that's been the average this program year so far. But as with everything, when we see the department settings change, we change our predictions. And that's what's been happening in the last 8 or 9 months. We've gone from 1,000 invites to well over 4,000 invites, back to 2,500 invites. Now we have this. So every time we see a change, every time we get more information about wasted invitations, we change our predictions. So hopefully, as time goes on, certainly after the next federal election, the new government will have 3 years in power. They can become a bit more consistent, and then everyone can feel a little bit more confident where they're at. Now, as you can see from the table behind me, only having 1,130 per month is going to blow out the amount of waiting time at each points level and also increase it slightly for a lot of occupations. So most occupations are going to need 75 or 80 points for an invitation, and accountants are going to be stuck at 85 points for a long time. So you can view this table at our website at www.iscar.com and get a little bit more of an idea about your own circumstances. Okay, the second topic is about the new regional visa. So I mentioned before that there's a perception there's a congestion in Sydney and Melbourne, and the government think both logistically and maybe for political reasons that if they can be seen to be moving people into regional areas, then that might win some votes, and I guess also in reality probably reduce the congestion while the infrastructure spending has been so poor in those places. So the new regional visa, 23,000 visa places, 2 visa categories, 9,000 for employer sponsored, 14,000 for state and territory sponsored. We're not exactly sure what the criteria is going to be. I wouldn't assume it's exactly the same as the current employer-sponsored and state territory sponsored visas. We'll have to see exactly what it is. But I think it'll be a little bit less than that in terms of what you need to get sponsorship for. A note that regional is defined as anywhere in Australia except the cities of Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and the Gold Coast. So that means places like Canberra, for example, are regional, which is good for those people. Okay, now the visa will be given for 3 years. You need to live in the region for 3 years and work for a period of time. We're not sure what that period of work is yet. It will be given priority processing. There's going to be a larger list of occupations, and you can change jobs as long as you continue to live in regional areas. So there's quite a bit of flexibility through that period. We presume the visa will commence from the 1st of July 2019, given it's part of the new migration program for 2019-2020, which starts on the 1st of July 19 as well. Okay, the third and final topic is, what will the Labor Party do if they win the election? So, look, I don't care who wins the election. I don't care if it's Liberal or Labor, as long as there's a good migration outcome ultimately. The current betting odds, if you like, is that Labor is about a 4 in 5 chance of winning the election, and the coalition, the Liberal Party, is about a 1 in 5 chance. So let's go on the assumption Labor win the election. What will that look like? They've already identified a huge mess with the Immigration Department in a speech today by the opposition Immigration Minister, in that there's a massive backlog of cases. There's 188,000 people on bridging visas in process at the moment, waiting for visas. So they have to be put into migration visa grants at some point, most of them, and that's going to affect, I guess, their processing priorities, how many resources they've got, how many visa places, things like that. It's a terrible position the department have got themselves into, and really Dutton's effort in the last few years has been fairly poor in terms of processing times. Now, Labor like higher migration numbers. I think there's a better than 50% chance they'll go back to a figure of around 190,000 if they win the election, because skilled migrants buy houses, and houses need tradespeople to build them, and tradespeople support, or quite to a large degree, supportive of unions and the Labor Party. So the Labor Party are always trying to support their union base, and as a result of that, there's more work for their union members by having a higher migration program. So I think there's a very good chance historically supports that as well. It'll go back to around 190,000. Labor doesn't as much like temporary work visas, so that includes company sponsored and certainly student visas as well, with all those work rights. Because what happens with all those people on temporary visas is that they can go and work and compete with Australian workers for the same jobs, which economically has got a tendency to bring down the wage level for what ultimately will be Labor Party union members. So they generally could look at becoming much more strict on the working rights of students. I think that's a really strong possibility to happen. Certainly the opposition immigration minister is suggesting that as well. So although they might increase the permanent migration program, they might make it a little bit tougher for work rights for students. They've also mentioned that they're going to be making more announcements in the next few weeks. So we look forward to that. I don't think they will mention 190,000 as a migration program. Bill Shorten, the opposition leader, has said 160,000 he's comfortable with, if that's what the experts say, which is a really good way of saying, hey, I don't want to be a target here. I don't want this to become a political issue, but it gives him the ability to talk to his own experts if he wins the election and then flick it back to 190. I think that's where it'll head. So I know everyone's pretty stressed at the moment, pretty disappointed about where the 189s are heading. I don't think the Labor Party will take away the regional visa. The chances are that will pass through Parliament. It's unlikely to face a disallowance motion. The Labor Party can use it if and when they want for whatever numbers they want. So it's useful for them to keep that visa in. The important thing is how many places will they give to the 189s, and I think you'll find it's a little bit more than what the Liberals intend to do. Okay folks, all over. Remember, if you want some quality management of your visa application, or you simply want to keep in touch with all the latest visa news, get in touch to migrationandiscard.com or jump onto our Facebook or webpage. And I will chat to you soon. Thank you.